Okay, so a lot of folks want to know very simply, very directly, and very succinctly what exactly is going on with Joe Biden. Well, I'm going to tell you directly for those who don't follow the news, who don't follow politics, and who want to know a little bit about at least some germane facts about who Joe Biden is and what he's doing and why he's where he is. The Democrat Party lurched to the far left after the DNC lost the 2016 election. The lesson they learned, at least this is the one they think was the right lesson to learn, was that by ignoring the far left, they were threatening to divide their party in half, maybe even create a third party. In fact, a lot of Democrats were even talking about a third party back then when Bernie Sanders didn't get the nomination. And so the DNC Brain Trust got together and they said, well, we have to do something to keep them in the fold. This is our most activist wing. This is where the energy of our party is. So we have to lurch to the left. And that's exactly what happened. You'll remember the famous confrontation of AOC and Nancy Pelosi, in which AOC barged into Nancy Pelosi's office, and in so doing, Nancy basically folded, is what she did. Instead of being outraged and telling her to get off and get out of here, I'm not backing down. Instead, Nancy caved to AOC. And when she caved, it sent a signal to all of the Democrats everywhere throughout the entire system that the left was in command. In 2018, all the middle-of-the-roaders that were elected to the Democrat Party on the promise of working with the president, these people were sidelined and basically nullified. They were not a factor anymore. They were told to go pound sand, basically. That's why you didn't hear very much from anybody who had anything in the way of working with the president to say. Simply wasn't going to happen, and it didn't happen. So everything from that point on has been driven by the far left and their maniacal policies, their extremist policies. And that was fine in terms of getting headlines from an obedient media that didn't challenge them and just went along with whatever the DNC told them. That was great. That was fine. That all worked. That was cool. But then came the presidential election time. And here you had a very powerful president who's extremely popular, with an extremely loyal base, probably numbering anywhere from 80 to 90 million by this time. It was 63 million back in 2016, so it's not far-fetched to say it's 80 million now. And in this process of getting ready for the 2020 election, the Democrats had Bernie again, but they had pretty much told Bernie, listen, don't cause a problem for the party this time. You can't run. People are not going to vote for an avowed socialist, and we'll lose. So we'll reflect your policies in our platform, okay, Bernie? But you're going to have to kind of take a back seat. We got to put somebody else up there who has some, possibility of getting some of the middle-of-the-road voters, because without the middle-of-the-road Democrat voters, we're not going to win. So their solution, they didn't have very many middle-of-the-roaders left. The old Democrat Party of Kennedy, for example, is gone. They're all retired, gone, dead. And only a few are left, and one of them happens to be Joe Biden. So if you look at the whole thing on paper, it seems like, well, Obama's vice president, we can get some black votes with Joe Biden. We just get Clyburn and one of these other party stooges to endorse Biden, and then we can say, hey, the black backs love Biden. And as long as we can keep his gap system down, we can keep him kind of cloistered away and not making too many mistakes with his voice, maybe we can use him as a Trojan horse. We'll make it clear to him that if you want the party to back him, you've got to listen to what we have to say, what the Democrat National Committee power brokers have to say. We'll do the policy, we'll do the running of the government, but you'll be the titular president, sort of a figurehead president. And Biden said he's always wanted to be president. He's always wanted to say, yeah, okay, sure. Plus he's suffering from probably stage 4 dementia, which is a progressive disease. But he'd be willing to say yes to anything, actually, if it's posed the right way. But that's another issue. Let's put that behind us for a minute. The truth is that Biden was the go-to guy that the Democrat Party put together solely because they believed that they could get some middle-of-the-road, clueless senior votes, career Democrats who are still alive, who are in their 70s, to vote and pull in that non-radical vote that they need in order to survive, in order to make it. So Elizabeth Warren should have dropped out long before, but she stayed in just long enough to sideline Bernie and thereby give the nomination basically to Biden. It was orchestrated, it was engineered. It wasn't the people's vote in the Democrat Party. It was the default vote that the Democrat National Committee decided was the only chance they had to win the presidency. So he became the guy. Now, Democrats are insidious and they're smart. They're not dumb. Don't ever say a Democrat, one of these Democrat connivers in Washington is dumb. That's not it. You've got to face them straight on for what they are. And they knew that Biden had a lot of dirty laundry, but they also knew that he had covered it up very, very well for a long time, and they really believed that CBS, NBC, CNN would help them cover up Biden's dirty laundry, because after all, Orange Man bad and Orange Man's attacking media fake news, and so we can get, even if they weren't gung-ho Democrats, the media would be happy to cover up for the Democrat National Committee. And therefore they put Biden up, knowing that they could candy coat him, and that they could spin any story or omit. Omission is one of the greatest powers that the media has. You don't say anything, you just pretend that a factual story didn't happen. And that worked really well for many years, but social media has changed all that. And that is exactly why there's so much anger at Twitter for attempting to block the Hunter Biden story, because we're now finally facing the fact that social media is exactly the same as media, as all media. There's no difference. And they don't deserve any special treatment at all. But we had this thing in place, protect them from liability as a means of helping stimulate technological advancement, particularly information technology advancement. And that was great. I mean, we all loved the early days of the internet when there really wasn't any censorship back then, in the very beginning. Nothing at all. It was free. It seemed like the most free forum in the world. Anybody could express their opinions, and it was wonderful. The freedom was wonderful. But then the liberal left-wing Democrats who ran Facebook and Twitter decided, no, this freedom is not so good when these people are saying things that make the Democrats look bad. So we can't have that. We can't have Democrats looking bad. We'll choke off this stuff. We'll suspend that account. And because nobody can sue us, since nobody can sue us, we will be free to decide what is appropriate for people to watch and what is appropriate for people not to watch. We will decide. Jack Dorsey will decide. Zuckerberg will decide, and his minions. So that was basically, and look, let's be fair. What Twitter and Facebook are doing in censoring free speech, exactly the same thing that the New York Times is doing, exactly the same thing that the Washington Post is doing. When they refuse to report factual stories, they're essentially censoring the facts and basically spoon-feeding you liberal left-wing tinged stories in order to get you to vote Democrat and keep their Democrat establishment system going that has been very profitable for the people who own the Washington Post, CNN, and elsewhere. This is a money-driven anti-Trumpism. They don't want anything interfering with the cozy little phony bubble world that the fake news media has created over decades. It was a lovely little place where they could decide what the facts were and decide what the truth was, regardless of what the truth actually was. Now, the beauty of the internet and beauty of social media was supposed to be that free ideas could really compete out there. Anything come out there. And frankly, the definition, the creation of a new category of speech called hate speech, which I think is baloney and bullshit, I think that started the ball rolling towards censorship. It's better to have all ideas out there fighting, all of them, than to have some ideas labeled as not proper. So other than, actively calling for the death of other people or harm to someone, something obvious like that, I don't think there's any rationale for censoring anything on the internet or Twitter or Facebook. I'm sorry. Unless it is an actual organized crime or criminal activity that they're definitely, obviously putting forth, I say nothing else should ever be banned. So now Marsha Blackburn is holding hearings. A new Commerce Committee Senate law has been proposed in which Twitter and Facebook will no longer have protection, legal protection. So then they slander or they omit or they bar something, they can be sued for infringement on free speech rights of the individuals who are putting that out there. And this will immediately end electoral interference by Democrats who run Facebook and Twitter. So we're very much in favor of removing all liability protection, except for very new companies that need that to get started, new social media company, new information technology. Yeah, you need some protection for a few years so you don't get sued immediately by a bigger competitor and thrown out of business. Yeah, you need that protection. But for anything established over, I don't know what the number of years would be, a couple years, a few years, those companies should be held liable for their policies. And if you can't hold them liable, then they don't have any business being out there at all. So I'm in favor of removing all restrictions on suing Twitter and Facebook. I think it's time to teach these people a lesson, teach left-wingers who use their companies and use their businesses and use their news and think it's okay now to manipulate facts in order to serve yourself. We think that this kind of behavior by Democrats who own the tech companies must end and will end. So we're very much in favor of it. Now, let's get back to the incident that really stimulated this huge, massive call to end protections for Twitter and Facebook. It's literally picking up steam as we go. Nobody wants, even Democrats are saying they don't want to end these protections. And I think that's a good thing. I don't mind having these giants sued up the teeth. If that gets them to be more responsible in observing the rights of individuals to free speech, then I say yes. And also, court cases will define what people can and cannot say in the court of justice instead of the back rooms of a Twitter liberal who doesn't like something someone says. So once we have it decided by courts, then things will be a lot clearer as to what Twitter can and cannot do. And that would be a good thing for the country. So I'm in favor of removing the 230 protections for the big social media giants, and I think all of you should be on board with that very same thing, in my opinion. Now, let's go to the big story, Hunter Biden. All right, so when we talked about the dirty laundry of Joe Biden, one of the biggest examples and biggest parts of the dirty laundry aspect were what they call Biden Incorporated. Now, Biden Incorporated is very simple. It's where you take your family members and you tell them all, okay, you guys can sell access to me, okay? Anywhere you go in this world, anywhere you fly, anybody you talk to, You basically tacitly, quietly put out a sign saying that you're for sale, and receive millions from governments and so forth. Half of that you can keep yourself. Half the millions you keep yourself. And the other half of the millions and millions that Russia and Russian oligarchs and other people are paying us for access, that'll go to Joe. So Joe had a system in place where he sent his entire family out across the country, and not just the country, the world, and they collected payoffs from people who wanted favors from the American government, who wanted favor from the Obama administration. Stop having this. Just do something to get this prosecutor, removed. He's bothering us here at Burisma. He's snooping around at all our dirty under-the-table deals and our crooked payoffs and other things. Come on, you have to stop him. Stop this investigator here in the Ukraine from looking into us. Come on, Hunter. Ask your dad for access. Ask your dad so we can ask him to fire this guy. That's exactly what happened. We now have a paper trail that shows that Hunter Biden, who put a sign out around his head saying "I'm for sale," was, quote, wasn't hired, he was paid off by Burisma, and his job was to get his dad to pressure the Ukrainian government into dropping the prosecutor who was doing his job and going after corruption at Burisma. And that corruption included payoffs to Joe's son, Hunter. So naturally, when Joe got over there, he said, "You're going to fire that prosecutor. Yeah, you got to stop this. He might disclose all the payoffs and things you guys have been paying me. If that happened, everybody would know that Biden Incorporated is real, and I've been fleecing people for payoff bribe money for my whole political career and opened up a whole can of worms, and it would embarrass Obama. So we got to fire that guy, or else you're not getting your money, Ukraine. You're not getting your relief money." So naturally, Ukrainian government, faced with that ultimatum, either they had to forego all this money they need for their economic development, or they have to fire this one prosecutor who's looking into corruption at Burisma. So they fired him. And then idiot Biden, who's one of the stupidest men ever to be in government, went on video boasting about it. So he took payoffs through his son, and it wasn't just his son, his brother, Biden's sister, Biden's brother-in-law, Biden's sister-in-law. I mean, it was a family affair all the way. And the word was, hey, well, Hunter's doing it, let's all do it. And so they did. They all went out and they sold access for millions of dollars to various governments. And they pay the Biden family member. The Biden family member would keep half and give the rest of it to Joe Biden. And in this way, this corrupt crook was compromised by foreign governments. For example, China knew all about his blackmail and payoff system and held it over Joe's head. That's why Joe never had any strong anti-China policy. That's why he didn't do anything about, let's say, for example, the Huawei Corporation, which was attempting to define electronic interfaces in a very insecure manner that would have allowed China to spy on people all over the world if they used their technology, Huawei's technology. Trump has been absolutely adamant against this, but Biden looked the other way during his whole administration while they did this and many other things. Anytime there was a problem with China, all China had to do was pick up the phone and let Hunter or anybody know that, I really would like them to drop that, or, why don't you, we don't really want you to, put any tariffs on our crappy steel, so, whatever it might be, whatever policy preference they wanted, all they had to do is pick up the phone and tell Joe, hey, let's not do this, or let's do that, or can you say a few good things about China? And Joe would do it. Joe would do it. Quid pro quo constantly. He was constantly doing the bidding of those who, number one, paid him off, or number two, were threatening to release information on his corruption and his payoff plans and on Biden Incorporated. So China had Joe over a barrel. Iran had Joe over a barrel. Russia had Joe over a barrel. Ukraine. Everybody had their hands in Joe Biden. They either had paid him off through one of his family members, or they had threatened to use information about the payoffs that he was receiving through his family members, and thereby influence the government, blackmail the government into not taking hard stances like the ones Trump is taking when it comes to Europe, when it comes to anywhere. This was a giant influence peddling scheme from a corrupt swamp politician, Joe Biden. He received payoffs. He received them constantly. He'd never thought anybody would challenge him because, like a lot of criminals, when they get away with it once or twice, they come to think, hey, I can do this a million times. And that's exactly what Joe did. The criminal family, the Biden criminal family, continued to put a sign out saying, we're for sale. You want a policy change? Do you want something done? Here, just pay off one of my family members, and you can either get a meeting or you can get a rule changed or a policy, a statement in public for the men. We can do all kinds of things to help you out as long as you make those payments to Biden Incorporated. And that is how Joe Biden became a millionaire, by using his government position to make himself rich. This is not a conjecture, this is a fact. They were very careful to make sure that they didn't leave any paper trails. Everybody in the Biden family was told, don't do anything that could be disclosed or anything that could cause embarrassment to Biden or the Obama administration, but go ahead and fleece anybody you want, get as much money as you like, just make sure to send half of it to Daddy Joe, and good luck. And that was it. Joe, who is a pathological liar, a true pathological, Trump is a pathological truth teller. He tells whatever comes to his mind comes unfiltered. It's the truth. That's a truth teller. Joe is the opposite. Everything is scripted for Joe. It doesn't matter if it's a pure 100% lie or not. It doesn't matter. All of its politics, all of its traditional swamp politics, the very thing that Donald Trump rose up to fight against. The very reason we voted for him was to stop people like Joe Biden and other establishment, both parties. I'm talking about the rhinos, the Romneys, the Flakes, the McCains, these people who took payoffs from defense industry under the table and then pretended they were virtuous people fighting for America. These kind of jerks who made money off of their government service. All of that establishment crap is why we voted for Donald Trump, to bring them that fucking, excuse my language, establishment swamp down. Just bring it down. And now, and of course they never wanted to go down. They had a giant money-making scheme. Biden was just one of the most egregious examples of the money-making scheme. Hillary did the same thing. Obama did pretty much the same thing. Everybody in that party, many others did it too. Jeff Flake did it. John McCain. You know, John McCain was part of the military-industrial complex. He's one of the guys who was pushed forward to take aggressive stances in foreign wars and send our boys off and keep the wars going for the pure purpose of keeping the defense contracts running, more money pouring into John McCain's bank account under the table, more buddy-buddy arrangements with defense industry people. And the whole idea was to continue wars so that these big companies could continue sucking taxpayer dollars off into their profits. And that's exactly what they did. Big overruns, huge amounts of just writing checks off for ridiculous projects, all to keep the defense industry going. Meanwhile, our own streets were full of potholes. Our own infrastructure suffered, but we're more than ready to build a road in Iraq. This is the kind of crazy thinking that the establishment allowed to go forward, because by doing this, the establishment was able to continue profiting with money off of it. In other words, they profited off it. They made money off of it. All right? So since they made money off of it, they had to keep it going. In fact, they had kept it going for many, many years. Many, many years. They had kept it going. And that was fine until the guy who understood the system, a guy who'd been part of the donor class system with payoffs and things, who understood how politics worked, a guy who was part of the donor class, who had a bird's eye view of the corrupt system, Donald J. Trump, decided to throw his hat into the ring. When he threw his hat into the ring, when he did that, it scared the hell out of every establishment crook, every corrupt person like Joe Biden too, like the media clowns who profit off of Democrats who lie and cheat. It scared the hell out of them, and they decided from that point on they would be Donald Trump's mortal enemy. And unlike other politicians who back down to this massive Hollywood music industry, elitist left-wing garbage, he didn't fold. And thank God for that. Trump 2020.